everybody. This is Alan Ellman, the Blue Collar Investor, with BCI podcast number 154. This one is titled Selling Cash Secured Puts Exit Strategies, the 3% Guideline. We're going to be using a real-life example with Nvidia Corp, which trades on the NASDAQ exchange under the ticker NVDA. Now, as we all know, exit strategies are an integral part of our put selling strategies. It will help us mitigate losses, enhance gains, and frequently turn losses into gains. With the 3% guideline, what we're doing is we're protecting ourselves as share price declines, despite the fact that we did a rigorous screening process to select that underlying security. So let's start by defining the term, the 3% guideline, as it relates to selling cash secured puts. This guideline will give us a parameter that will assist us in determining when to close our short put position if the price of the underlying security starts to decline dramatically. Now, when the price of the stock drops more than 3% below the out-of-the-money put strike, not below the current market value when the put trade was initially executed, but below the strike of that out-of-the-money put, we should at that point consider closing that short put position to help mitigate the losses. Now, most of the time when we close this short put, we will be doing so at a loss, because what we want to do is protect ourselves from a much greater loss if the price of the underlying is not performing the way we anticipated when we entered the trade. Now, the cash that was used to secure this original put is then freed up to initiate a brand new put trade with a different underlying security to help mitigate some of the original loss. Let's move now to a real-life example with Nvidia. On 8/20/21, Nvidia was trading at 208.16. Now, at that point in time, the short put was sold. The expiration date of the contract was 9/24, so it was a little bit over 1 month. The 200 out-of-the-money put, remember, strike prices for puts that are out of the money are lower than current market value. So with the stock trading at 208.16, we look to the 200 out-of-the-money put, which had a bid price of $5.65. Now, what is the status of the trade if Nvidia drops 3% below, not the 208.16, but the put strike of 200, which would bring it down below 194? That would represent a share price decline of $14.16 per share. So it's a pretty significant share price decline. So let's first start by getting our initial calculations using the Trade Management Calculator. And for those of you listening to this podcast but not actually watching it, I will describe the details of the spreadsheet. On the top portion of the screenshot, for those watching, it shows that on 8/20, the 9/24/21 $200 put was sold at $5.65 when the price of the shares of Nvidia were trading at 208.16. Now, the middle portion of the screenshot will give us certain information on our initial calculations. And for those watching, the red arrows will show that on a 36-day return, the time value was 2.91%, which annualizes out to 29.48%, once again, based on a 36-day trade. Now, should the price of Nvidia drop below the 200 strike and we take no action to mitigate, as we will using the 3% guideline, but for a moment, let's say we don't and we allow exercise, we would purchase Nvidia at a discount of 6.63% from the original 208.16. So the spreadsheet will give us that information regarding the initial calculations unexercised and exercised. Note also that in the blue circle in the middle of the screenshot, it tells us that our break-even price point is 194.35. Where does that come from? The 200 strike minus the 565 put premium. Now, the lower part of the screenshot will give us our exit strategy price points. And for those who are not watching, we have a blue arrow showing that the 3% guideline computes to $194 per share. So that's the price point at which we would consider closing the short put because the price of the stock dropped 3% or more from the original put strike of 200. Now, what is our loss if Nvidia does in fact drop below 194, the 3% guideline price point? So let's kind of work out a couple of different scenarios. If we don't close and if we do close. Well, if we do close the short put, is it 35 cents? In other words, 194 is the put strike, and the break-even price point, as we showed you, is 194.35. Is it that a loss of 35 cents if we close? The answer is no, because it's going to cost us some money to close. We'll get to that in a moment. Now, if the shares are put to us and we don't close the short put at a price of 200 and Nvidia is trading at 194, are we losing 35 cents per share at that point? The answer is yes. If Nvidia stays at 194 throughout contract expiration and we allow exercise at 200, yes, we are losing only 35 cents per share. But remember, we would institute this 3% guideline not knowing what's going to happen with the price. All we know is it's dropped quite a bit, and we had screened it, and our expectation was that it wasn't going to lose all this ground. Of course, there's no guarantees. Now, if we close the short put, is it greater than 35 cents per share? Well, the answer is yes. And the reason for that is that if we're forced to close the short put due to the breach of the 3% guideline, we're going to be losing more than that 35 cents because it's going to cost us money to buy back the put. Simple as that. That loss is represented by the following formula. 565 is what we generated when we sold the short put. The cost to close that short put is probably going to be greater, not definitely, but most likely going to be greater than 565 because the original put was out of the money. And as the price of the stock goes down, now that strike is near the money or in the money. So that means that the time value component will probably be greater. And there may be an intrinsic value component as well. So more than likely, it'll be more. And that means that we will be closing at a loss. But once that happens, we could take the cash that was freed up from closing that short put and begin the mitigation process of the small loss we took and have prevented a much larger loss. So let's summarize. The 3% guideline is used to mitigate losses and potential greater losses. That, folks, is the point. We're already in a losing position, most likely. What we want to do is stay away from a humongous losing position. In the case of Nvidia, if the price drops from 208.16 to 194, that's where our 3% guideline is, and we recognize that there's a potential problem here, and we should take action. The spreadsheet will show a break-even price point of 194.35, which will result in a loss of 35 cents per share if the shares are put to us at 200, and at expiration, the price of Nvidia is still at 194. In other words, it doesn't decline further. And this represents the break-even put strike minus the put premium. And of course, this doesn't include any exit strategies we may have executed during the course of that contract. Now, if we bought back the put, then as the price shared, the loss would be the formula I just showed you, 565 minus the cost to close of that 200 put strike. Typically, this would result in a loss greater than the $0.35 if exercised price per share. And once again, that would be only if Nvidia did not go below that 194 price point when that 3% guideline was breached. Now, folks, you know this already, but I'll state it anyway. Not all trades will be winners, but our job as CEOs of our own money is to mitigate losses and enhance gains. And that's where our exit strategy arsenal comes into play. On the Trade Management Calculator, created by the blue collar investor, there are more than 10 exit strategies available for selling cash secured puts, and more than 10 also available for covered call writing. And those are all inherent in the spreadsheet. Before I go, our two best packages, educational packages we offer, where you can get information from our website. I'll show you where in a second. Our BCI package, which is an acronym for our best and most comprehensive educational package ever offered by the blue collar investor. It has 18 components, 6 online video courses with downloadable workbooks, 6 calculators created by the blue collar investor and found nowhere else, 5 of our best-selling books in ebook format, and the 18th is our annual 13-month premium membership, which has a huge educational component, including over 250 training videos. We also have our trade management TMC package, which includes that trade management calculator, which you saw briefly in this podcast, as well as our new exit strategy book, my 8th book published in 2022. So those two packages are available on our website. To get more information, including videos of these packages, go to our website, thebluecollarinvestor.com, and click on the link in the middle of the screenshot that says Best Discounted Packages. You can also purchase items individually in the bluecollarinvestor.com/store link. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to watch and or listen to this BCI podcast number 154, Selling Cash Secured Puts Exit Strategies, the 3% Guideline. Folks, I hope you enjoyed my presentation, but most importantly, I hope it puts cash in your pockets. As always, this is Alan Ellman, the Blue Collar Investor. Take care, everybody.